I am here to talk about communication options for people with ALS that are not of getting it from like an AAC manufacturer. So I'm starting off with this quote because the last part has been meaningful for me for many years, is that the inability to communicate through natural speech is incomprehensible. And I think we just saw that on the video from Mandy, that she couldn't comprehend not hearing his voice. And besides our opposable thumbs, the ability to communicate is what differentiates us from the animal kingdom. That has been studied. And the other part that has been studied is that the loss of communication is the biggest challenge for people with ALS and MND. I have been fortunate to go to our ALS clinic at Pennsylvania Hospital for 15 years, and I have people all the time tell me, I'll take that walker, I'll take that wheelchair, but don't you dare tell me I'm not going to be able to speak. So it really is incomprehensible. And a lot of times people wait, and I think that was also brought up. My statistics are a little different than what MNDA has, and I think I'm going to change my statistics to theirs. But this was an American study that 50% of people with ALS and MND become impaired with dysarthria, which is slurred speech. 25% have anarthria, which means the inability to produce any sound. And then less than 25% or less are able to be understood throughout the course of the illness. Now, that word understood, it might only mean that the wife or the husband understands them, but they fall into that statistic. And just to educate the audience that we probably all know this, but traditional speech therapy, practicing your cuz and your us, is contraindicated for people with ALS. ALS is a disease that causes fatigue, and the more you move these muscles, the worse the speech is actually going to get. And especially with people with bulbar onset, the same muscles that you're using to speak, you're using to swallow. So the more you're trying to swallow and you take 45 minutes to eat, you're probably going to get worse with your speech during the course of the day. We know in general language is not effective with people with ALS, but what we are seeing, some of the speech language pathologist researchers are looking at primary progressive aphasia and ALS, and this is recently being explored. There's some articles online about it, but it's something to consider because we know that a lot of our families come to us and say, well, my loved one needs something to communicate. Well, it's much more than just putting a device in front of them or putting a letterboard in front of them. First of all, you have to include the user in the decision making. I tell people all the time, you're the captain of the ship, I'm going to listen to you. What that sometimes leads to, though, is counseling with the family, because especially if you have an older person with ALS and they have a young grandchild who is addicted to their texting, and they're like, Grandpop needs to text. Well, Grandpop has never looked at a smartphone, so you can't just assume that that's what's best for the person with ALS. And the one thing that I've found after my 20-year career here is that I have worked with several patients that could not read, and they never told me. So most of the devices that we are looking at for people with ALS are text-based systems, and we assume they can read. The United States is a 14% illiteracy at this moment, and there are 900 million people worldwide that cannot read. So you should never assume that someone can read. And the way I have phrased this since I started in my career, because people get offended if I say, can you read? I say, how do you spell? And they'll tell me, well, that's not so good. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, my letters get mixed up. Oh, okay, well, that's good to know. So you need to establish that. Is there any temporal dementia going on? Learning disabilities, language issues, and by that I mean if the person with ALS speaks Greek and his caregiver only speaks French, we have to come to a happy medium somewhere. Looking at the vision, hearing of the person with ALS and their caregivers, okay? And I can't say this enough, positioning. The first person I ever worked with ALS, and I kid you not, was in a wheelchair like this. and he wanted to use a computer. Well, he can't use a computer at a 45-degree angle. So you can't introduce a communication system until you get them seated or positioned correctly. And then this is a biggie. Why don't some people use communication devices? And I've heard it numerous times. Well, that'll be giving in to the disease. Well, and I tell them, yeah, sure, not communicating with me sure lets ALS win, doesn't it? Yes. I don't need it. And they'll tell me, I sound fine. And we know, we want to actually start a study that there is a disassociation in between what people are thinking, what's coming out of their mouth in slurred speech, and how it sounds. We know that. We just need to study it more. So they don't hear themselves anymore. I've heard numerous times, you're supposed to understand me, and I always say, I didn't realize when I got married that I was supposed to understand dysarthric speech. So again, that goes back into the counseling aspect. Emotions such as fear and anger, and a lot of people are just resistant to technology. So this presentation is really designed that if you find yourself in a situation where you have to get a communication system in place with a person with ALS or MND immediately, these are some tips that you can use. And then these are some tips that you can use if they want to purchase a system, in a week or so. So we use now the word rapid access. A lot of people will talk about, oh, they need low technology. Well, my mental health nurse, Jen Clapper, kept talking to people about low technology, and their immediate response was, he's not stupid, or she's not stupid. That word low just means intelligence. It doesn't matter what follows the word low technology. So we call it rapid access technology. And it's made a huge difference in people like being accepting of a letterboard or a picture board. And so then there is also some high technology that I'm going to go over. But I can't stress this enough. If you leave here today hearing me, please take this with you. Do not just establish a yes-no system. It has to be yes, no, and maybe. If you're only using yes and no, you're forcing the person to answer inappropriately. So maybe it could be start over or try again. A lot of people use eye blinks for yes, no, maybe. I truthfully despise eye blinks because sometimes I blink and I miss their blink, and then we're just in this vicious circle of did you blink or did I blink? I use, it's serious, so I use targets. So I'll say look this way for yes, look this way for no, and maybe. They don't have to do anything but move their eyes if that's all they can do. They can move their head if they want. So I give them targets, okay? And then we can use letter boards, picture boards, eye gaze boards, magic slates, and my favorite, I love boogie boards, okay? If anybody doesn't know what this is, it's an electronic LCD board. It's like the old version of when you would go into the dollar store and write something and then you flip it. Well, this is an LCD board. I write on it and I press the button and it goes away. $15 on Amazon. I love these things. And by the way, anything I have up here, I'll have in the back at the end of the presentation if you want to look at it. But I had letter boards that went so quickly out there, I didn't think anyone was going to take them till I was done. But if you need communication in a hurry, you can make something like this, an alphabet, right on your printer, and you assign each row a number. And I have it double-sided. So if I was looking at you and we were going, okay, is your first letter in row 1, 2, 3, she would nod or whatever our established system was, and I say 3, K, L, M, she nods, I'm like, oh, M. Okay, that was less than 10 seconds, okay? Whenever you're using any type of letterboard, picture board, well, not picture board, but letterboard, there's etiquette involved, okay? So I always tell people, I hold up the board and I say, okay, what's your signal going to be? A nod, okay. Do you mind if I guess? And they'll say yes or no. Because some people want to spell out every word, because they'll tell me, well, if I was verbally talking, you wouldn't interrupt me. And I'm like, well, maybe I would, but that's me. But so then you can guess or not, okay? If they say guess and you go P-A, you can go pain. Aha, we got pain in less than 10 seconds, okay? So we have lots of picture boards, letter boards. These come, the one in yellow here is called a critical communicator, and it comes in 21 different languages. So as you can see, there's symbols, and above the symbol, there's a word, like for oxygen. And there's some in Spanish out there, but I have some in Hindi and Chinese. And so the word oxygen would also be written in Chinese, English, and it has the symbol. So they come in 21 different languages. And that's called the critical communicator. And then we have laser pointers, which I'm going to get. These laser pointers, this particular one is from Low-Tech Solutions. And what it is, it's a laser pointer that is actually on a mount, if you can see it. And that mount could either go on a set of glasses, it could go on a baseball cap. And she also sells mounts that go on your hand, like this, okay? So I'm gonna need you guys now. So the purpose behind the laser pointer is that I can be all the way over here and be spelling something to you. Can you turn so they can see you a little bit? And so I would go from letter to letter to letter. There's phrases up there. And in other situations, I'm going to go this way. Now, my poster board was 59 cents at Walmart. And so I could be spelling things out, just going to Walmart, getting a piece of poster board. Now, thank you. Margaret sells these on her website. But I put instructions. If you need this today, you go to the Walmart, dollar store, Five Below, you get a laser pointer, you break a piece of popsicle stick, put the stick on the button, wrap it with duct tape, and the thing stays on the whole time. And then you can put it in a headband or on a set of glasses here. And you can have a communication system in place for about $3 in about 5 minutes. So it doesn't necessarily take that you have to special order something. And the majority of crisis calls I get are people who are probably anywhere from 72 to 48 hours away from dying, and they need a system quickly. So I tell them about this if they have head movement, hand movement, or I'll give them a letter board, or I'll email them a letter board so that they can get some form of communication system in place at end of life. And I'm going to have my Megabe. I don't have time to show it, but I have this, and my partner in crime, Lisa, and I are happy to show you how to use the Megabe. But I love this device. This is a great device, not necessarily mainstream, but it's great for rapid access. And then there's a new device called a safe laser system, which basically just the person is making selections simply by wearing a laser on their head. So instead of eye gaze, they're using a laser system, and that's better oftentimes for people who might have neck drop, who can't use an eye gaze because of their neck weakness, but they can still move their head around enough to activate that. And then a lot of our folks are using iPads, iTouches, etc. And there are many ways of accessing the iPad. And I'm grabbing some. Lots of different stylists. Things that you can wear on your hands, on your head. And then through switch access, this is a device that acts as a Bluetooth, and you put the switch into here, and you actually use the iPad just through switch access. So I can move my head, and I can access my iPad through a switch device. This is about $149, and this is about $90. And so that gives you hands-free access to the iPad. And then a mount, which I do have. This is a $270 mount by R.J. Cooper. And you can mount your iPad or your Android device. Has a universal clamp at the back or bottom, so you clamp it on the wheelchair, but then you can clamp it on the side of the bed. And it also has an extender so that I can extend this as far as I want, put the iPad in and secure it and lock it down. And I mean, it's not bad price for $279. And that's the R.J. Cooper one. So the communication apps, you can look at this at your leisure, but I tell people you don't need to spend a lot of money to get a good communication app. They're verbally or speak it, they're good stuff for a cheap price. There are over 400 communication apps for the iPad alone right now. So I I just tell people with ALS they don't need to spend a lot of money. And this is one of my favorite apps. This is Flipwriter. Any of you familiar with the old Lightwriter where you had dual display? Well, this does the same thing with your iPad. So you're typing, the individual's typing at the bottom with ALS, and somebody can be sitting directly across from them and see what they're typing. And lots of different Android apps also. And the Android access, so this is what makes it different from the iPad, is that you can take your Microsoft Surface Pro and you can put an eye gaze unit on here, okay? So you can use it with your hands, but then this is also a head mouse or eye gaze accessible or switch accessible, okay? So the picture in the middle is Dr. Hawking, and he uses a switch right here on his cheek, if you ever see it. And Intel just actually made the software that he's used for years available for free, and it's downloadable at that website. So, but it is switch activated, okay? It's not eye gaze activated. These are the eye gaze bars that you can put at the bottom. It depends on how much you want to spend. But last week or 2 weeks ago, OptiKey came out, which is a free software, so that if you buy the Surface Pro and the eye gaze unit, you can now get free software for it, because the software used to come like $700. So OptiKey really came along. And what the future holds, I believe it's in wearable technologies. There was just an article this week of a person who's wearing sensors all over his arms, and those sensors are turning sign language into text. It's not just that type of wearable, but other type of wearables, people designing wearable eye gaze for people with ALS. And think about the wearables with eye gaze, positioning wouldn't matter. The 23 inches away wouldn't matter. It would alleviate a lot of the issues. And then brain-computer interface, which is still in research, but it's basically trying to harness your brain waves to activate your communication device. And so I had low technology or rapid access kits out there, but they're all gone, but they are available from the ALS Association. We give them out for any hospices, for any nursing agencies that would like them. They're full of various letterboards and instructions and resources. Okay,
Thank you.
Questions?